A great start to an episode, or rather a video, is that this is the second time I've had to record this. The last time I recorded this, the audio was borked beyond all recognition. Anyway, this is the second half of a much larger video so I'm covering games my old man didn't get to play before he died. If you didn't watch the first Yakuza 0 video, probably go watch that. If not, I guess you're gonna get big chunks of the story out of context, big old spoilers for Yakuza 0. Anyway, on to the rest of the video, which is the second half of the previous video. Enjoy. Sometimes we're born incapable of functioning like a regular human being. Other times we break due to the things that we experience. But sometimes we just need an excuse to go batshit. Tsukasa Sagawa is the man in charge of Majima's exile, the jailer to his gilded cage, and the man that ensures that the limbo he's stuck in only ends when Shimano decides that Majima has served his purpose. Very early on, we see that Majima bends to him, even if all he wants to do is to bash his nose in. When told that the promised 100 million yen that would have gotten him back into the clan is in fact not enough, and that Sagawa is arbitrarily stacking another 500 million yen on top of it, Majima is pissed, but he can't really do much about it. Sagawa presses him, asking if he'd be willing to kill to get back into the Tojo clan before walking away and taking the top hostess of the Cabaret Grand with him. Every aspect of Majima's life is under Sagawa's control. He has men watching him at all times. His night job is to make him a small fortune, and his days are largely spent in his nearly empty room, save for a small radio. It's like living under a strict parent that only raises you because they legally have to, which I can relate to during the time that I was stuck with my birth giver, though I had the added stress of having to keep an eye on my half-sibling, which, in a way, is like having to keep an eye on the cabaret. Later on, Sagawa calls in to have a drink with Majima. He's normally just an asshole, so there's more to this than drinking with his stooge. When they do meet up, Majima has no time for Sagawa's empty gestures of friendship, and eventually the man just settles in to ask the caged mud why he wants so badly to return to the clan's good graces. If it had perhaps had something to do with his oath brother, Taiga Sajima, who is currently sitting in a prison cell for the murder of 18 men 3 years ago. Majima admits to it, and he wants to be there when his brother is eventually released, something that he can't do if he's a pariah to the clan. The idea is strange to Sagawa. He has no sense of loyalty himself, let alone for his own oath brother Shimano. Shimano being Majima's boss, and from a rival organization. I did some digging, and based upon Shimano's accent, he may originally be from Osaka, but ended up signing on to the Tojo instead of the Omi. Without going too deep into it, I suspect he's been a plant the entire time, but that's a topic for a later day. Sagawa returned to the topic at hand, that of the willingness to kill to get back into the clan. He presses the issue that to be a true Yakuza, one must have blood on their hands, since evidently you don't get entered into the family through murder like our favorite gabagool lusted Mediterraneans. To hammer home how much he loves murder, he also says that if Majima keeps his non-murderous shit up, he'd just make his job harder. Sagawa wants somebody killed, says that some dude named Makoto needs to draw his last breath, really sells him as a piece of shit. As I've already covered, Makoto is a blind woman that was a victim of sex trafficking, so either his info is faulty, or that's just the cover story. This sweetened deal is supposed to make the deed feel less bitter. Majima leaves with the info to try and track this Makoto down. After some shenanigans at the Gooner-adjacent establishment, known as a telephone club, Majima tracks down a woman that's connected to the man. He's got girls looking for a man with a bat tattoo, never saying why, but the dude that they work with, isn't anything like Sagawa said. He's no pimp. He protects them, in fact. Any info on the bat-tattooed man is the only info that he asks for in return. Sagawa isn't seen again until much later, but the fact that either his info is shit or he's full of it help show that he's not on the up and up. You know, for a dude intending getting a young lady murdered. He next shows up in Majima's office area, waiting for him right after he's already got Makoto in a safe house, very much not murdered. Not that the public knows any different, because of story reasons, a body double was killed by some batshit bisexual that I'll touch upon later. Sagawa asked why Majima didn't tell him about the hit before it became a front-page news. The body had the identifying parts of it removed, namely the face and fingerprints, yet it was dressed up. Majima spins some bullshit about not remembering much, post-killing Hayes and all. Kinda like post-nut clarity, but in reverse, I guess. He then asked why the previously mentioned batshit dude picked a fight with Majima at the cabaret. Majima just said it was a drunken brawl, which is fitting for the dude, so Sagawa drops that too. Sagawa fucks off and says he'll talk with Shimano, but Majima worries that Sagawa will catch on eventually and make moves to try to get Makoto out of Sotenbori. This plan goes awry when a betrayal from a Chinese doctor leads to Majima, the dude that was posing as Makoto, and the lovely lady herself to try to escape the city. Sagawa is cut on and is closing in. This culminates in Lee, the massive man himself, getting blown the fuck up as Majima and Makoto are stunned by the blast. Sagawa acts like a disappointed dad as he's about to finish off the Cyclops before getting shot a couple of times himself by Sarah. Sharp-dressed spook that he is. Later on, we see the previous scene in a new light, and that, like Dojima, Sagawa gets the fume with impotent rage. Love to see it. Good for him. But somehow the fucker is up to his bullshit again, torturing Majima the next day after getting shot in the back and the hand, seemingly being affected by the hand more so than the shot in the back. Last I checked, the stuff in front of the back is kind of important, but I guess he's just built different. He's keeping Majima alive so that he can help track him down the dandy man in the white suit, since this means that a third party is involved, which deepens the plot even more. That's like 4 or 5 groups all trying to get this girl. The plot kind of dogpiles on the poor girl. Before that, though, there's a scene that I think best helps you understand his character more. I wanted to get the raw info out of the way first.
だけど、お前は牧村誠を殺せなかった。まあまあまあ、100歩譲ってそういうこともあるかもな。俺もガキの頃、足の折れた文鳥を拾って帰ってきたことがあるんだ。お袋に内緒で必死に育ててさ。確か名前は豆太郎だったかな。動物なんか興味もなかったくせに毎日餌やったりして可愛かったな。だが親に嘘ついたのがまずかった。ある日家に帰ったら飼い猫の餌にされてたよ。生きたまま猫に食われる豆太郎を見て俺は思い知ったね。子は親に逆らえないってな。
ガキのくせに律儀なやっちゃ。
律儀ね。まあ確かに俺は素直でいい子だったよ。親の前ではな。
あ？
次の日その猫を殺してやったよ。お前のことは必ず殺すよ。でもその前にあの牧村誠を盗んでいった泥棒猫を始末しねえとな。
Needless to say, I don't think a healthy child mind would result in the killing of a mammal just after experiencing the first major death of their lives. Humans tend to be more off-put by killing off furry creatures. I feel like he was either very sensitive and snapped, which can happen, or more likely, he was always crazed to an extent and the event just pushed him to act. Psychopathy is different than psychosis. Psychosis is a detachment from reality. Antipsychotic meds help deal with the delusions and such. He could have had a bout of it, but seeing as how he's just generally a cunt otherwise, and seems to have a firm grip on reality, I'd say he's just an antisocial twat who is in the lifestyle because of his willingness to inflict harm on others and the ability to manipulate people. But enough armchair analyzing a middle-aged Japanese man for now. Time to have more story bullshit. He unties the mutt and then asks more info. Majima doesn't know jack shit about the dandy, nor does Sagawa know why so many people are after the woman. He was just told that Majima must be the one to kill her. The two come to realize that Nishitani, the batshit man, and Sarah, the well-dressed man, not that Nishitani is lacking in drip, both wanted her alive. Sagawa suggests the two might be working together, which, given all the details they have, isn't even a bad guess. It's wrong, but he's dealing with several other poker players when all he's got is 2 sevens, and the rest of the cards are ash on the table. Since Nishitani is in jail, Sagawa sends Majima to go find a way to get at him, since otherwise they don't have any other leads. Next time we see the cat killer, he grabs Majima by the throat and drills him non-sexually. Sorry for blue-balling you DILF fans. About Majima daring to go and visit Nishitani in jail, since, technically he had to leave the city. Anyway, after a bit of domestic violence, damaged daddy is placated when he's told the info that Majima got from Nishitani. Impressed that he got a weirdo like him to talk, he then goes on about the place that Sarah has brought Makoto, a den of vice and violence, a place where a woman's screams would not be out of place. He settles on a family road trip there, as he and Majima are ready to go to this wonderland, for people that don't understand what consent is. The two split up, Sagawa revealing that not only did he bring heat, he intends to blast the brains out of every living person that stands between him and Makoto's dead body, and yes, that includes her still functioning brain. Well, mostly functioning. She does suffer from psychogenic blindness. Majima realizes that a shot to death Makoto is no longer an alive Makoto, and so he needs to get there first, beating the fuck out of weird dudes in masks until eventually meeting up with Sarah, who tests his resolve because of fucking course the story needs to drag shit out in order for bad stuff to happen. Said bad stuff being Sagawa shooting Sarah in the back. Thanking Majima for distracting him, seemingly not picking up on that he's being betrayed once again, he gets a business card belonging to some jackass named Kazuma Kiryu, once again teasing our already blue and aching balls and or ovaries of the eventual conflict between our two leads that will never come to a head. Sagawa says that this family vacation is being extended. They're going to K-Town so they can track K-Man down so they can K-ill Makoto to death. Sagawa ends up stuck in a one-room prison of his own making, since he can't show his face in Tojo territory, leaving Majima the only one of the dreadful duo that has any degree of operational flexibility. Majima asks why they can't just ask his other dad for help, but Sagawa explains that this is for political reasons. He can't look weak in front of Shimano. Turns out that Shimano is trying to get to the top of the Tojo in exchange for splitting K-Town with the Omi. Since K-Town is only part of Tokyo, and the Tojo control Tokyo, this is actually not an awful idea on Shimano's part, because the Omi would keep trying to take over the rest of the city thing, but that's only if Shimano cares about remaining the head of the Tojo in anything but name. Sagawa also eventually lets it slip that Shimano's plan of having Makoto killed by Majima makes no sense, though that's because Shimano is working like an ogre. This man's got layers. But also, the reason why Sagawa wants to get all this done as well is so that he can be the Omi's point man in this operation. He'd get their chunk of K-Town, and the stronger their starting position, the better. He sends Majima to go and find more info on the real estate firm, staying in his goon cave all the while. Just straight jorking it. We next see the man when his oath brother summons him to have a chat after having taken Majima off the street. Shimano told him that he should have observed proper etiquette, likely to flex on him a little bit. Turns out that Shimano was playing his bro and Majima like fiddles at the same time. Sagawa doesn't like the idea that he's been used like this, convinced that he was facilitating the murder of an innocent woman, when really he was playing matchmaker in some roundabout fashion. When Shimano points out that Kazama cannot act out directly against Dojima, namely because he works under under him, and therefore needs to use proxies. Sagawa brings up that Shimano is not dissimilar. Majima is useful because he's off the records of the family, an entity outside of the system that Shimano can use and discard if necessary. Not unlike the Task Force 141 from Call of Duty back when I was in high school, Majima is disavowed and able to operate outside of official channels. If he was caught, he would have been claimed to have been operating of his own accord. Along the way, Sarah is brought up again, but Sagawa says that he's not a danger anymore since he shot him. So saith the man who was shot basically the same way by the same exact man. Shimano corrects him, even says that it's good that he's not dead. They can use him to get at Kazama later. Shimano eventually tells the two to track down Kiryu via his oath brother Nishiki. Sagawa tries to lighten the mood by bringing up despite the day not being great for him personally, it's wonderful for Majima, who no longer needs to end the life of Makoto. This does little to make Majima feel any better. Next time we see Sagawa, he tries being a smug prick like always, chastising Majima and asking him why he's not finding Makoto for him to kill and for making his life so much more complicated. However, the dog is starting to get madder and madder, snipping back that he needs to go to the Dojima family offices because they had her shot. Trying to reassert his authority, he grabs the mutt by the collar and tries to make demands, with Majima insisting that he's not taking orders anymore and that he will kill anybody who makes a move against Makoto. Sagawa eventually realizes that the dog has gone mad and admits that the dog has finally broken out of his cage. In his penultimate appearance, we see him standing outside a meeting with Shimano and the Omi representative. They're negotiating the terms of their agreement, but since the lot is in the hands of Sarah, none of this fucking matters anymore. Sagawa takes it with more grace than is expected of a man that has had a hair-trigger temper so far. Seeing that Majima has a gun, Sagawa asks if he's there to plug Shimano for his treachery, but not getting an answer, he stops Majima one last time, to tell him that despite everything, he feels as though they've had a great time together. Finally, the last time that we see the damaged daddy himself is after Majima has gotten his classic look, the funny jacket and the bastardized mix of an undercut and a bowl cut. Like how Nishiki dogged on Kiryu, Sagawa tries to dog on the big dog himself. Now let's let the scene play out, because it's pretty good as well.
俺は決めたんや。何が正しくて何が悪いかわからんこの街で誰よりも楽しく誰よりも狂った生き方したるってな。
はあ、お前はもっと地味な男だと思っていたが、まあそれも悪くねえ。まあお前とは妙な体験しちまったが、これからは同業として陰ながら応援すんぜ。関西で暴れたい時は連絡よこせ。
そんなもんいらん。できることならもうあんたとは死ぬまで会わんでいたいもんや。
確かにな。まあお互い敵も多い意味だ。せいぜい死なないように頑張ろうぜ。
あんたは死んでもしないやろ。
そうだな。
ほな、またな。大きにやで、佐賀。
は？何言ってんだお前。
あんたは何があっても諦めへん。執着心の塊のような男や。あんたには諦めんことの重要さを教わったわ。俺も執着するで。真島五郎っちゅう男の生き方に。
好きにしろ。 待ってるぜ、真島ちゃん。はあ、ずいぶん早いお迎えだね。さ
Unfortunately for him, while Majima is out of touch, he himself is out of time. Sagawa wasn't a good man, and you might expect me to say that he wasn't a bad man either. No, he was a piece of shit, but he was a believable piece of shit. I've met people that, when given any degree of control over another person, they have taken no shortage of glee in making them suffer. To a degree, he did what he did out of more than sadism. I truly believe he lived the life to the fullest that he could. He knew he wasn't a good man, that his lifestyle was full of bad people, and he played the role fully. Or rather, he filled it well. It's in him that we can see how Majima used cruelty and the lifestyle's unwritten rules to justify his behavior, living through the early 90s onwards after his future girlfriend got an abortion, and then he struck her, and it drove him off the edge by disassociating to a degree until about 2006 or so, which is when Yakuza 2 happens, I believe. In the end, he got what was coming to him. But fuck if he wasn't worth the watch. Through the eyes of the blind, what can be seen that those of vision cannot? Perhaps in the end it is the blind being led by the one-eyed man that has seen the most. Of truth, of justice, of love. During our time with Makimura Makoto, and as somebody born and raised in Michigan, it's taking every ounce of restraint to not call her after one of our brightest stars.
Mom spaghetti!
We are able to better see the world of the game through the lens of somebody who isn't shrouded in the darkness of the underworld. A true civilian in all senses of the word, that hasn't been tainted by the shadows, that have tried to cling to her for years now. A woman who, despite being written as a damsel in distress, including the dumb choices the plot forces her to make, still shows strength and determination that a lot of women aren't afforded in fiction. So what does a woman who sees through falsehoods and artificial walls see in our resident mad dog? Well, that's for me to spend multiple thousands of words trying to articulate. Going from the first time we hear her name, it's instead used as a false name for a massive man, Wen-Hai Lee. Already a good start to a romance, but also it's kind of funny and bittersweet that Lee is meant to invoke the image of his sworn brother, and I only just now realized that Oda too is meant to look like a previous character, famed hater of single mothers, Akiyama. Thankfully, Akiyama didn't traffic anybody sexually, just turned down a woman, leaving her shitty husband because she wasn't able to get a job in the Pussy Poppin' district. After finding out that, indeed, it's the young masseuse and not the man that is massive, Majima is conflicted regarding if he should slay this young woman. He helps her get away from some goons sent to grab her, and along the way, the intimacy of the relationship begins when they have to pretend to be together a few times, and once they are in a safe place, she falls to her knees and clings to his.
ここまで来たら大丈夫やろ。お前大丈夫か。おい、何を。大丈夫や。もう大丈夫や。
店長は
心配すんな。奴も逃げた。すぐに会えるはずや。
本当に。
ああ。
どうしてこんなことに。
The chapter and this section for Majima closes out with him being reflected with the blade he would try to use to kill her, showing him being conflicted in this lifestyle choice he might make because he believes that he has to. Closing out on that, leaving us in suspense, it's the kind of blue balls that can work well on a first-time playthrough. But this is my third time, so for me it's more... It helps to show that he's a wannabe hitman with a heart. This is a dude that goes and watches softcore porn in a CD VHS shop, helps a little girl get stuffed animals, and loves himself some 80s pop. Motherfucker looks more happy, dressed up, and on roller skates than damn near any other time we see his visually impaired ass. Our next time spent with the singular function eye-possessing duo is when she's stashed in a warehouse owned by a friendly rival of Majima. Majima presses her for info on the man with the bat tattoo, but not wanting to answer him, she tells him to ask Lee, who may or may not be dead at the present time. Setting out to find the sex worker-loving giant, he eventually does so in a den of vice and violence, a Mahjong parlor. Thankfully, I wasn't forced to learn the Devil's Click-Clack game, though Majima is forced to endure it over cutscenes that he and Lee chat before, eventually getting into another violent altercation. Once that's settled, Lee explains things about the man with the bat tattoo, the shittier prequel to the famed story about a girl with a tattoo of a dragon. Far less revenge bondage. Anyway, the guy's a piece of shit that sold Makoto into sexual slavery. The experience caused her to develop psychogenic blindness. It's understandable why Makoto didn't want to talk about it with Majima. One day, I plan on making a video specifically about how games handle sexual violence, but this video is not that video, as I need to play other games that I can better cover the topic. For the time being, though, I'll say that, besides Majima's rather tasteless, wasn't the best thing to say. Maybe it was better in the original Japanese. Majima returns to the warehouse, and the two bond over the traumas that they've experienced together. That's how you know the series is queer. Trauma dumping and bonding are like first and second dates for queer people. Third date is sloppy sex that makes the heteros regretteros, having functioning eyes. Back to the blind woman. Majima eventually suggests that they should eat, because evidently women are sad and grumpy about being kidnapped because they're just a bit hungry. So he grabs them some takoyaki, a recurring thing with them, and upon returning with the steaming hot balls, they partake of them together. Majima notices that the sightless girl wears a wristwatch, something useless to somebody before the invention of braille-based timepieces, but it used to play a song that she was fond of, so she kept it. However, it's broken now, but she keeps it as a memento. Deciding that it's holding her back for some reason, she discards it, but unbeknownst to her, because she can't fucking see. Majima pockets it to use for later. Fucking Mickey Mouse meme, this is a secret tool for later. Before leaving to go work his night job, he asks her if she knows Sagawa by chance. Since she doesn't, this just deepens the mystery that I've basically already explained, but it's nice to show the early steps as we go along. Also, and this might just be because I like world building, and at least Skyrim thought about it, where and how does she shit and piss in that place? She keeps being left alone for long stretches of time, and I know that in survival situation, people's bodies sort of shut down, but like, she's eating and drinking. Surely, she's been needing to piss and shit at some point. The fact that Makoto's chamber pot isn't a heat action item for later fights is a missed opportunity. Later, we see Makoto when Lee is beginning to explain the plan to get out of town with the three of them alive. But the plan is one that a former hitman would make, so he drugs the blind woman so that she'd fall asleep while he and Majima fight over if it's a good idea to kill a serial killer to cover up her death. Honestly, not a bad idea, so as long as he's telling the truth. But since the last time Majima was almost tricked into murdering a woman was based on falsehoods, I don't know if I would trust Saejima Light here. The two duke it out like two morally ambiguous apes before Majima puts his foot down regarding the issue. Lee's backstory of having a little girl that went blind and eventually died is sad, but Majima won't have some stranger's death in his conscience despite totally using a knife on enemies later in the game. Majima fucks off with the uniform meant to disguise the woman as Makoto. as well as the pictures of the woman, disposing them at a public park. The next day, it's in the news that Makoto is dead. Lee wants to congratulate Majima on a job well done, but the poor Cyclops is more confused than anything. After many shenanigans I've already covered before, Makoto finally wakes up from being drugged and wants to know what the fuck is going on, which is understandable. She, however, is still a woman in a Yakuza game, and thus doesn't have all that much agency since multiple criminal organizations are after her. Credit to her, though, for feeling bad that multiple people are risking their lives to ensure that she doesn't get taken. Majima at least does tell her what's going on to an extent, who is after her and that she and Lee should leave since Sagawa might be wise to deploy to fake her death. Lee isn't sure that the Yakuza won't just hunt them down anyway, but Majima says that he's going to try and make sure that they can survive somehow. Unfortunately, before they can fuck off, the Chinese doctor does his betrayal scene. Majima has to beat up Sagawa's men, and with the doctor almost dead, Lee decides that the plot will force him to choose the dying doctor that betrayed them is more important than making sure that Makoto is safe. So Majima has to go run with her back to the clinic so that they can take Lee's van. But Lee's van does the best Hindenburg impression that it can, which leads to Makoto being nabbed by Sarah. It's a while before we see her again. The previous few chapters about trying to get her after she gets nabbed by Sarah. By the time we see her again, however, it's Kiryu's time to be her caretaker. Of course, our least favorite human, Trafficker, is there to ruin things, so I'll just skip to the part where they're alone in a shady motel again. We learn more about her backstory, though by now the details have been covered in the story. She still retains the light inside of her that the story has been trying to stamp out all along. Still saddened by the fact that the people trying to help her keep dying or going missing. Kiryu has some rather touching words on how he relates to her.
私の人生ひどいよね。なんか
ああ、ひどいな。長いこと暗い道を歩いていると、この先もずっと暗いもんだと思っちまう。前に進むことが嫌になる。自分の道がこの先どうなってるか分かってるやつなんてこの世に一人もいねえ。俺らにできるのは立ち止まって泣くか一歩でも前に進むかの二つだけだ。あんたはどっちでも好きな方を選んでいい。入り口までは俺が案内してやる。
私、カムロ町に行きます。兄に絶対に会いたいんです。だから私を連れてってください、桐生さん。
ああ。
He offers to help bring her to where she wants, where she needs to be. Her strength lies in purity of purpose, something that she doesn't let go of, no matter what happens. While the plot doesn't give her much in the way of shit to do, to impact how things play out, she does stay true to herself for as long as anybody reasonably could. The two of them end up in K-Town, and while trying to get a hold of Tachi, Kiryu seems to not be able to, so Makoto gets dumped on the homeless man that he stayed with the other night. She remains there while Kiryu goes off to talk with Tachi, though by the time Kiryu returns, it's not with her brother, but instead his brother, Nishiki. The three get all their stories explained before Kiryu and Nishiki leave to try and go and rescue the cyborg, once again leaving his sister to await his return. Kiryu, of course, promises to bring him back, and knowing what happens, it helps to show why I don't make promises. When the siblings do reunite, it's when his body has already gone cold.
Kiryu、
お兄ちゃん、お兄ちゃんは？お兄ちゃん、どこ？
I've said it before on the channel, I believe, but I never got to have any last words with any of my dead relatives. They all die horribly, suddenly, not unlike Tachibana. I understand her grief. I remember all the phone calls and stop-ins by other family members. How preventable it all was. Her brother's death was a tragedy, and a long line of tragedies in her life, and the worst part was that they weren't even done with her. When Majima is looking for Makoto to try and save her from the scheming, the plotting, he runs off towards the empty plot. There, he sees a figure up on a nearby rooftop where the owner of the plot of land is standing, staring. He rushed up there to reach her, and asking if it's really her, she silently answers this question by turning around before speaking. In her eyes is reflected the man most hell-bent on saving her, and whose love has been eroding the bars of his cage for as long as they've known each other. As she felt her brother's lifeless body, the darkness began to seep into her. So too, though, did the light begin to enter her eyes again. The contrast is something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. How once she was one of the few characters capable of seeing others in a light that they aren't regularly allowed to be seen in, as a civilian not stuck in the pits of the underworld. It's through her brother's death that she can finally see both the light and the dark. Majima tries to have her abandon any notion of vengeance, instead seeking safety in the deal with Shimano, but she herself sees no point in safety anymore. The deaths of Sohei Dojima, Daisuke Kuze, Hiroki Awano, and Kaiji Shibusawa are all that matters now, her dead brother's vengeance, at her behest, being what drives her. She even offers the money from the sale of the lot, a twist on the fact that he was really going to kill her, her seeing all aspects of the entire plot now awakening her to how they operate in the underworld, even if she herself is too weak to do any of it herself. Though she does believe, falsely, that this is what Tachibana would have wanted. Majima tries telling her this, but she takes off, trying to tell him that she's fine on her own right before tripping and falling right after. The face that he makes when she says to leave her alone, it reminds me of how I felt taking care of my old man when he'd get dope sick. Some symptoms of it include shitting yourself, puking, being a pissy cunt, muscle aches, and pains. For a man that had chronic pain and half his body being a wreck, it was twice as bad. Majima, of course, offers her food. She accepts, and the two begin a walk through town to get her octopus balls to shove in her mouth. While they walk, you're forced to actually walk, you can't run, and as she kept falling over and over again, I turned back to try and help her, but she kept getting up on her own. My old man didn't always get up on his own. Back then, I could lift him one-handed, and that was before he died at the weight of 80 or so pounds. I see in her, during her time spent in this fresh hell, my old man at his most weak. In what she might see as strength, her gaining the desire to see others finally killed for their misdoings. She's ironically just as weak as a middle-aged trans man whose body is ravaged by addiction trying to operate a failing body. Their first attempt to get takoyaki is thwarted by a rush of people. Which is funny, the places are only busy when the plot demands it. This place is normally deader than a bar on a Tuesday. She brings up that she smelled a cart earlier, and the two resume their slow walk towards the belated balls. They discuss the weather, a classic awkward conversation to have, before she thanks him for walking slow right after she falls over again. He jokes about running everywhere, probably because to make the game not take even longer, players tend to run as much as they can, and myself included. Once at the food cart, the two have a tender moment where he gets a fallen leaf out of her hair, and she lets the cart owner know that he is in fact a keeper, for having suffered so much for her, and that he's still willing to endure further suffering for her sake. Her conflicting motivations are at odds within her, like two wolves, only instead of both of them being gay, both of them still love Majima, but in a very different way. The two bicker a bit about her plans. She's more shut down than anything, just wanting to make it work rather than think about the logistics about it. Her brother's corpse, fresh in her mind, likely has her acting more out of character than ever before. When my old man died, I largely operated off of instinct and what plans I had in place before. I only started to feel any semblance of self months later, after I'd been fucked over by my grandmother, and an agreement was reached regarding his ashes. I was facing jail time, so I settled for her only getting half of them, breaking my promise that my old man had me make when I was 16 to keep his remains safe from her. For this, I was disowned in writing, something that her and her spineless husband denies existing, despite him personally handing me the letter they had the funeral home draft up telling me that I'm not actually my dead father's child. So, I get it. I get what she's feeling, or rather, isn't feeling. She sends Majima away to get more balls, but slips away while he does so. We next see her when she's trying to convince Dojima to kill his LTs in exchange for the lot. Of course, it doesn't work, it never would have, but she's relying on instinct when she's both out of her depth and out of her mind. After the falling out between me and the woman that shat my old man out onto this bitch of an earth, she began locking her doors in fear of what I might do to her. I was the strongest, the brightest, and the best of our family. She never understood that I had more important things to do in my life than, risk murdering an old cunt that beat her children to the point where they turned to substance abuse to dull the pain of being alive with such an awful woman for a mother. But she did back me into a corner, where I was already facing jail time. Any natural urges of revenge against the leading cause of my father's drug-induced suicide were curbed by the fact that other people in my life I need to take care of. Since then, one has stopped talking to me. She's currently stuck in a war zone of her own free will, helping to remind me that people create their own hells no matter how much I love them. And just as Majima reaches her, she feels the pain of her own hell finally impact her at several hundred meters per second via a 9mm round to the abdomen. Majima tears through the men left behind to finish him off, with Dojima and his crew taking off via helicopter, Makoto left bleeding out on the ground. Eventually, Sarah and his men arrive to evac her, him telling Majima that he gets to come along this time.
Makoto, おい聞こえるか死ぬんやない 復讐でも何でもお前の望みを俺が叶えとるからせやから頼む
Even Even just getting him cremated was a process. The funeral home kept fucking up, not answering their phones when somebody else was willing to pay for the cremation. They also managed to both misgender and misname my old man in multiple instances, either attaching female pronouns to his legal masculine name, or using masculine ones for his feminine dead name. Truly, fuck-ups of the highest order. Along the way, I was repeatedly told that I was next of kin, that I could sign for things, all up until his mother wouldn't agree to abide by what his wishes were. In Michigan, the wishes of the deceased don't matter. Some bullshit fucking laws. After a certain point, I was left feeling like Majima, scrambling for what I could do in a situation where nobody in my life was of any use in helping me with anything, either practically or emotionally. While Makoto is in a coma due to her injury, the world around her is ablaze. At times, literally. She's now more of an object to be dangled about, to be traded and recovered, only beginning her path to recovering after Majima has torn his way through the Dojima family. Awano lay dead, killed by Dojima's assassin. Kuze and Shibusawa were both arrested, though that was on Kiryu's end. The two protagonists in their own ways avenged Tachibana, and in some small way ensured that even Makoto's worst impulses were satiated. To me, the best revenge for my old man I can think of to acquire is to do what I'm doing. To do good in his name. To do my best to live well. As the channel grows, I'll be able to help more and more people, myself included, my younger family members too. We were all harmed by our family cycles of bitter behavior. Just as Majima has accepted his new life as a mad dog, he meets Makoto again, several months after the events of the main story. The cutscene is far too long to just let it play here, so I'll cover the most important details. She is out walking with the nurse or doctor that had told Majima of her condition. They're going to meet up with the surgeon that did the operation. Unfortunately, a couple of goons under Majima's employ try to get them to feature in a porn flick, not taking no for an answer. He eventually has to get them to go fuck themselves via direct applications of force. This is after Makoto was able to get the other girl to run off, risking herself at the hands of these two men. Mind you, this is all in broad daylight, and helps show the kind of shit that happens in the real world. Sexual abuse isn't all behind closed doors, but Majima ensures that she doesn't hear him speak. Her eyes are working finally, and he doesn't want her to make the connection. When the surgeon finally arrives, it turns out that he does have feelings for her. Pushing his own down, Majima forces the man to act on his feelings, ensuring that Makoto will move on. However, despite the sadness in his eyes, the lingering feelings, he does leave her with one last kindness that she encounters upon returning to the empty lot.
全部終わったよ。もうだからゆっくり休んでね、お兄ちゃん。私ね、たくさんの人に助けられた。リーさんや桐生さん、セラさん、本当にたくさん。でも一人だけまだお礼を言えていない人がいるの。ずっと一緒にいたのにその人の名前も知らない。顔だっておぼろげにしか見てない。ほんとダメだよね、私って。お兄ちゃんがこんなこと言われても困っちゃうか。ごめん。 私の。ありがとう。ありがとう。
With that, her part in the story of Yakuza 0 is over. Through Kuze, we saw how hell is other people, how they can test us, judge us, cut us into better shapes. But can we not find heaven in other people as well? Kindness, love, tenderness. People that can soften us into better shapes. Makoto helped Majima see that there were things worth living for, beyond just a sense of shame, a desire to make right what once went wrong, even if it was outside of our control. Sure, yes, he went mad as a way to get out of having to mentally deal with what he was living in, the hell that he chooses for himself, but it's through the love of Makoto that one day he would be able to move on from that falsehood, live as himself, the himself that was yearning to breathe free for nearly 2 decades. Heaven may need to be reached through violence, but that violence need not always define who we are. As I've said before in the video, sometimes we are born broken. Homare Nishitani is a man that gives off natural-born crazy vibes. Not sure what flavor of it though, but he's a man that knows the lifestyle he's in and lives it as fully as he can. He burns bright, but doesn't burn long, unlike the Yakuza series that is currently lingering on 14 or so games. Depends on if you count side games or not, and to what extent. Like, are we talking about that fucking zombie game? Anyway, he pops up in the story after murdering some woman, calling Majima and setting up a date with him at the cabaret. Once Majima gets there, the mad lad is mad groping the tits of some hostess. This is against the rules, of course, so Majima isn't happy. Nishitani refuses to answer anything of substance until he and Majima beat the shit out of each other. Since that's also against the rules, he thinks fast and calls the cops on himself, saying that he was gonna rob the place. The fat stacks of cash that he used to rent the entire place for himself was likely the cover story, and also shows how little the man cares for losing things in his life. After the two have some fun on the floor, Nishitani's boner growing 3 sizes that day. He still won't say jack about shit. Majima is left with little in the way of answers and fucks off to go to his office where his second daddy was awaiting him. Later on, Majima tracks down the best way to locate Nishitani, who is currently vibing in a jail cell. After he thrashes his way through the offices, finds some detective who gives some backstory on our resident hedonistic homare, while day drinking on a boat before sending Majima to where Keiron resides, after winning fights against degenerates like a Jonkler ripoff, a medical practitioner, and a dude with a Metal Gear-ass name. After that, we get more Nishitani backstory, namely that he's pretty good at killing people. See, the detective adopted the lad when his crimes were just pickpocketing, but eventually the kid graduated to murder when somebody killed his adoptive sister. This taught the detective that sometimes crimes are dope as shit, and so eventually he opened up a death arena under the river so that he can both line his pockets and have the criminals beat each other to death. For all his contributions to society, Nishitani gets to use the jail as his private hangout to avoid dealing with pesky things like rival criminals. The detective brings the Cyclops to hang out with his middle-aged delinquent man-child, who's laying down for an afternoon nap. Majima kicks the fucker awake, and we have a lovely cutscene.
Huh? こらこらこら真島君やないかどないしたん万引きでもしたんかお前に会いに来たんや西谷ほんまに嬉しいわ
ちょうどわしも真島君に会いたい思っとったとこなんやで。
ああ、お前が俺に何の用や。
この前の殴り合いはほんまに楽しかったな。思い出しただけでもうっとりしてまうわ。あせやけど警察に邪魔されて最後まで蹴りがつかんかったやろ。
自分で呼んだんやないか。
アーセント真島君、お店では殴り合いしてくれへんねんもん。せやけどどんなにええ喧嘩でも蹴りつけへんのはあかん。野球の試合と同じやで。途中で腕ん中止になったら選手のええプレーも無意味になってまうやろ。
5回裏まで終わっとれば試合は有効や。
何言うてんねん。あの喧嘩はまだ1回表やで。わしは何としてももう一度殴りようって楽しみたいんや。
おもろいおっさんやな。せやけど俺は備えないようで来たんとちゃう。誠がさらわれた。やったんはお前か。
なんや、仕事の話かい。
誠さらったんは白いスーツの見たこともない男や。お前の仲間やないんか。
わしにそないな友達はおらんで。
なんやて。
せやけど予想はつく。わしでも真島君でもない第三の勢力や。
第三の勢力。一体何者や。
まあわしは大方目星ついとるけどな。
知っとるんか。誰なんや。
西谷さん、これ。
ああ、そうや。酒買うてきてくれるか。せっかくの来客やん。ええ酒頼むで。
わかりました。ちょっと待っとってください。
どないなっとんねんここは。
わしらみたいな仕事しとるとな、安全なねぐらがよう見つからんのや。ほんとこそうちゃうか。
ああ、
せやけどここはお上に守られた日本一安全なねぐらや。
こないな連中に囲まれて安全やと。
拳一つでわしの玉取ろっちゅうような人間はおらん。大抵は刃物や飛び道具使ってきよる。ここやったらそないなもん持ち込めへんからな。ここはほんまに熟睡できる我が家や。
西谷、誠をさらった第三の勢力は何もんや。
そうやな。真島君は知りたいわな。佐川のおっさんには到底調べ上げれん相手やもんな。教えてあげようかな。けどどないしようかな。
おとなしくはかんと今度は楽しい殴り合いで済まんことになるで。
そんな言われるとわしごっつい期待してしまうで真島君。この間よりもっともっと楽しませてくれるっちゅうことやもんな。
Once again, Nishitani wants an ass kicking after talking in baseball innuendo, but since I'm on that JRPG grind set, it doesn't take long to kick his nuts in, though seeing as how he's throbbing before the fight.
もう我慢できへん。
変わったやつやな。お望み通りとことんしばき倒したるわ。
After a nice little slicing and dicing, Nishitani spent on the floor and likely needs a change of undies. Good thing I always have my boys stacked with tissue packets handed out by minimum wage earning women. Nishitani finally opens up to us, and not just in a fun gay way. Man, with all that talk of baseball allegories, you'd think they'd have referenced positions and such, but that's more of an American thing, and these guys fuck in the Japanese style. He lets loose that it's likely Sarah that nabbed Makoto, and that the Nikio Consortium are the full force behind his actions. Sarah's the leader. He compares the groups to relevant organizations in the real world at the time.
アメリカの CIA、ソ連の KGB。
No longer relevant since, well, the USSR isn't around anymore, but a phantom of the KGB is currently committing war crimes in Ukraine, so maybe still a bit relevant. Along the way, he also explained that there are 3 factions at play trying to nab Makoto. For clarification, they are the Consortium, the Shimano family, as well as the Dojima family. Worst threesome I've ever heard of, honestly. Majima and he talk further with Nishitani, trying to scare him off from soloing Sarah and his men, but upon further prodding, is up to go take on them together, though he still wants to get paid for the job of handing her off to Shibusawa. Majima has none of this, seeing himself as responsible for her now, and seeing a bit of himself in Majima, besides in the obvious homoerotic sense. He gets pumped up to just go and do it for the sake of his new sweetheart. In the Cyclops, he sees a bit of himself as a teenage murderer avenging his adoptive sister. Unfortunately, homophobia in the shape of a paid-off guard arrives just as the boys are about to go and have some fun felonies together. Nishitami's cop daddy got of it, and then he himself stands up to the gunman to make sure that Majima can escape. Guy goes out hard, but not as balls out as he would have liked to do with his precious Majima-kun.
おっちゃん真島君わしはこのアホンダラと片つける
西谷あんた
思いっきり暴れたらええ思いっきり楽しんだらええヤクザなんぞどうせ早押しのんやなら後先考えんと自分の道前に進めや
何言うとるんやさっさとくたばらんかい
早いけや真島誠っちゅう女生かした責任きっちりとっとらんかい行けや真島
許してくれ頼む
Turns out that getting shot a lot just turns him into a zombie. I hope he ate the dude's fucking face off. The worst part was the dude betrayed the cop dad and Nishitani because his daughter was starting college or some shit. Now she's got no dirty money coming in and no dad. Heteros stay losing, I guess. When Majima and Ueno had beat the fuck out of each other, he brings up Nishitani and how he lived like a crazy idiot. He also brought up Lee, but he didn't so much as die like a crazy idiot as he died like any target of the IRA. Nishitani was the proto-mad dog. A man who could not be kept caged, a man who chose his own life, and while that life did claim his own in the end, he went out on his own terms. Bloody, screaming, and probably with more cum in his underwear than in all the tissues that the protagonist used throughout the game. Built like a sumo wrestler but with the cunning of a big pussy, Shimano is a man whose hunger far outpaces his capacity. He's the man that took Majma's eye, his brother, his freedom, and in exchange, Majima kept him alive and sustained for a long time. Shimano first shows up well into the story, at least in person. He summons Majima and Sagawa to meet with him, but seeing as how I already covered that earlier, I'll just give the basics. He's likely the third most plotting man in the plot, Kazuma being first, and maybe Dojima or Shibusawa is second. Hell, for the fact that he jammed Majima into the plot, one of the few things that Kazama didn't plan for, he might even be the second most effective one. At the end of it all, he got half of what he wanted. Dojima didn't dominate the clan. Sure, he didn't get to take over the Tojo himself, but he's sure that in a decade's time, his family will run it. But, that didn't happen. We'll see that in the next Yakuza game, which I should be covering in December, since it's a Christmas title, but also going off script a little bit, and also this is the second time I have to record this because Audacity decided to fuck up. It's going to be the 20th anniversary of Yakuza 1 in December of this year, 2025. It came out on December 8th, and so I'll try to squeeze in the review then. At the very least, throughout December, I'll be able to put out videos. I'll probably make a video later on about how I'm going to be changing up how I cover these games, because honestly, covering this game in the way that I did, not great. It's been killing me kinda, but anyway, this is helping to inflate Shimano's section, because guess what? The next thing I gotta read is, this section is pretty short, because there's not really much to talk about that wasn't already covered by the other sections. Shimano's a big fat bald cunt, and not the kind I wanna fuck. Honestly, can't even say that he did all that much to change Majima's character besides abuse him until he snapped. But in snapping, Majima was able to keep Shimano at bay. As well, he'd eventually outlast him, and be considered a pillar of the Tojo, while Shimano was seen with a good amount of disdain over time. Achieving apotheosis isn't for all of us. We don't always get through the other side of the tunnel and find light. Becoming divine in form and function isn't what Majima needed to survive the lifestyle he chose for himself. He needed to drink deep and descend into the darkest pits that he could find. When he began his journey, he was a beaten, starved dog in a cage, left there to rot by his master until he was of use again. He performed every duty that he had diligently, thriving in the tasks set before him, but never quite being able to meet his full potential. No, this dog needed to break free of his cage before he could become a master of his own life, and the people that he met along the way helped to ensure that this always faithful dog can learn new tricks. Sagawa taught him to endure, and proceed no matter what stood in his way, and that the politics of the Yakuza were messier than the pants of a well-paying customer when girls get too frisky with them after one too many overpriced drinks. Despite the beatings and mistreatment, he somehow was less bad overall than Shimano, because at least Sagawa was largely a straight shooter regarding his goals. We can sort of see an early sign of how Majima behaves towards Kiryu in that sort of mentor role, but more twisted. In Makoto, we see something that gets hidden over time. Human decency, kindness, love. Well, healthy love, as healthy as a failed assassin and a victim can be. She presented him a life that could have been better for him, and had he not been dead set on being there for his oath brother when he would one day get out of prison. Though he eventually was gonna marry another girl sometime, so it's a bit messy. That's a Yakuza 5 problem.
よし、おまけでもう一つサービスしちゃう。
本当ですか？
With Nishitani, we see the mask. And just as an autistic kid needs to pretend to be neurotypical, so too did Majima need to learn how to be something he's not. To be batshit. Far more horny The man that collected cards of lewd women wasn't nearly horny enough to survive the world of shirtless, oiled-up men fisting each other. Through the Osakan Madman, his erection grew 3 sizes. Just as with Makoto, his heart was filled to bursting. What a shitty medical condition. Shimano's kind of a cunt that just abused him and used him. My birth giver wasn't much different. And with that, my cunt count for the video has reached the double digits. Congratulations, Shimano. You actually won something, you bald asshole. In the end, he had to break so that he could keep on going. Abuse victims tend to learn behaviors that get them where they need to be, but have to hide who they really are. They may shatter, lock themselves in, or ward others off, but at the center, they're still a human being that deserves care just as any other. Unless, like, they're continuing the cycle, in which case go fuck themselves. Thankfully, we got wacky woohoo man Majima eventually. Though, it is jarring seeing him behave as he did in the OG scenes from Yakuza 1, but that's something to discuss in December. The Yakuza series, I've watched through the ones I haven't played, save for the most recent ones, are about family. They're about love, duty, honor, homoeroticism. Yakuza 0 helps show what our parents force us into, and how we adapt to those environments. To an extent, the boys did choose the life, and once you do, anything that happens to you in relation to it is on you. But the life didn't need to be so bitter as it turned out to be. Kiryu honestly believed that honor was what drove the Yakuza. Majima didn't seem to have any such beliefs, but did think that the bonds that are between brothers was worth any amount of suffering. I got to see some of my experiences being reflected in a lot of the characters in the game, as well as one of the last games I finished before my old man got hooked on hard drugs again, back when he only was addicted to painkillers. When I first played the game, I felt more like Kiryu, right? I was younger, I wanted to do right by my family more, but I had, for a long time understood that my family was fucked up. But now, I'm more like Majima. I endure. I outlast. I behave how I wish to. But unlike him, it's not an act. I just don't silence myself like I used to. I don't hold back for the sake of people that don't understand me. But at the center of it all, I'm not dissimilar to who I used to be. Or rather, the better parts of me aren't deadened. And because it went into my head, and I can't get it out of my head, it's sort of like watching SpongeBob. When you're younger, you're like, oh, I'm a spongy Bobby boy. And then eventually you're like, man, I'm more like Squidward. I just want to be left alone to do my weird esoteric bullshit. The sub-stories really help shine a light on the boys, who they are when they aren't tied up in some grand conspiracy. Because of this, I will also be doing a video later on about them, likely a ranking video, one of those tier lists, since people cream themselves over tier lists. Humans love lists. Yakuza 0 got me into the series, and it got me well enough that I plan on covering the rest of the games over the next few years. It's gonna be a long journey, and if you'd like to follow along, I'd be thankful. Any questions about my old man, or about the games, I'll answer them down below. If nothing else, these videos are for raising awareness for trans-masculine people, as well as just trans people in general.
Yo. Kiryu-chan!
Due to still not having the space that I need to build a small shrine for my old man, I will be working on this here digital collage by adding these two felonious fistfuckers. I'd like to thank you for watching, as well as my current patrons over on Patreon. There's only 2 at the moment, but their support still means a lot to me. Their names are Connor and Misty. I thank them for helping enable me to pay for my phone bill this month, as well for future months. If you'd like to support me, there is a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. My next big video is on Coffee Talk 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly, where once again I'll be talking about the patrons, including 2 new ones I believe. See you next time, and until then, stay safe, stay alive, and remember that trans rights are human rights.